Good evening, and I want to welcome everybody to the first Long Island Muslim Roundtable. I'm hoping to make this a yearly event where we can, in a systematic way, create a Muslim agenda for Long Island. And the purpose of tonight's roundtable is to, in a bi-county way, we have leaders here, Muslim leaders from Suffolk and Nassau. I think we have a good cross-section here of the Muslim community, both Nassau, Suffolk, older, younger, male, female. So I think we have enough here to have a good discussion. We're going to break down this discussion into segments. I'd like to first start with talking about some of the things, some of the milestones that we've had. Some of the milestones that we've had, things that we've achieved with the Muslim community, both in my district, and I'd ask anybody else to chime in to any milestones that have been secured in other areas, so we know basically kind of the status quo of where we are when it comes to the Muslim community. Then, after talking about that, then I'm going to talk about certain categories. I've broken down 4 or 5 categories of issues that the Muslim community should be discussing, and then I'm going to ask for suggestions. I have Maria Sheikh over here who works for me. She's going to be taking notes, and out of this discussion, we're going to generate a report that is going to be constructed with the input of everybody here. So as we go through the various categories, for instance, Islamophobia, education, diversity in the workplace, security. As we go through these, what we're going to talk about is what your vision is as we move forward in this new legislative year. What needs to be done, what laws need to be passed, what funding needs to be secured. What does the Muslim community want? In order for you to secure what you need to know what you want, and we need to put that out in some kind of a report so that, and everybody here will be given a copy of that report, and you can submit it to your own elected officials and say, look, this is our legislative agenda for 2019, 2020. These are the things that we need for this particular year. Different levels of government secure different things, so we have to talk about that. Lastly, what we're going to talk about is something that's very important to talk about, and that is what needs to be done to clean our own house. Right? You know, we talk about what we need from elected officials, and we have to fight against racism and those who are trying to hurt us, our community, both in the Hispanic community and the Muslim community. We rarely talk about what we do to ourselves and where we are there. We're in family right now. All right? So we can have an honest discussion about these things, about our interactions with each other, what we need to do, how we can form better coalitions to get some things. That conversation needs to be had. And then we're going to talk about general categories, for instance, Muslim women issues and young Muslim issues. Before we even start the discussion, what I want to do is just go around the table, have everybody introduce themselves and their affiliation, and then we'll start the discussion.
My name is Angela Ramos, and I'm here representing the women of my organization, the Long Island Women of Issue Coalition.
Assalamu alaikum, my name is Talat Hamdani, and I'm running for office from District 3, Council seat, Town of Brookhaven, and the affiliations are Amoni and Pasni and September 11 Families for Peaceful Communities. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Paul Grindle. I'm assisting Hamdani and Rum. My affiliation is the Libertarian Party of Suffolk County.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kevin Shakil. I'm from America's Islamic Radio and empowering young professionals of Long Island.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Dr. Mahmoud Iqbal. I'm on the executive committee at Masjid Noor and member of the Muslim American Advisory Board for Suffolk County.
My name is Rasiha Ahmed, and I'm just here to support this cause in general. Good evening, everyone. My name is Hannah. I'm a student from Stony Brook University, where we do have a large Muslim population, so just representing the Muslim.
My name is Sana, and I am volunteer at Antigo every day. Assalamu alaikum everyone, how are you? My name is Lamia Al-Khalili. I'm an admin at Express Medical Care and member at the Muslim Advisory Committee of South County.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, my name is Lina Al-Khalili. I'm the president of the MSA NYAT.
Assalamu alaikum, I'm Dr. Ahmed Al-Khalili. I'm the medical director of Express Medical Care. And I'm their husband.
Their husband.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, my name is Noor Fazli and I'm here to see how it goes with the Muslim things.
Assalamu alaikum, Vilma Santos from chapter leader from Islamic Spanish New York and also member of Suffolk County.
My name is Sabri Al-Khanaq, president of Turkish Cultural Center New York, and I want to welcome everyone again here to Cultural Center tonight.
Hello everyone, my name is Hafsa. I'm the member of this Turkish community in Suffolk County. A very new member, just moved to New York a month ago, and representing Advocates of Silence Turkey, a human rights organization as a spokesperson there.
Assalamu alaikum, my name is Rafi Fazli. I'm representing PASNI, Pakistani American Society of New York, and Masjid Darul Quran Academy. MDQ Academy is the largest Islamic school in Long Island. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Shahid Mia. I'm president of Masjid Darul Quran. That's in Bayshore. And like I said, is the largest Islamic center in Long Island. And I'm a director of Omoni, that's American Muslim of New York, and director of Pakoni, that's a Pakistani American of New York. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Bashir Kamal, and I'm founder and director of Pakistani American Community of Long Island. It's called Pakoli. So there is so many confusion, Pakoni, Amoni, Ani. So this is Pakistani American Community of Long Island. So I'm here to see what we can do for our community. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Wakil Ansari. I'm director of PASNI. In the meantime, I have been a freelance writer, political worker, and political activist.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Sajid Shah. I'm the board member of Islamic Center of Long Island, Westbury, and also I'm a vice chairman at Crescent School in New Hampshire, and also board member of PASNI.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Dr. Roshan Sheikh. I am a member board of trustees at Masjid Darul Quran in Bayshore. Even though I've been living in Long Island for the last 35 plus years, but I'm a member of no Pakistani, Pasni or societies, even though I know most of our friends who are here and I already know. Thank you very much.
Good man.
Assalamu alaikum, my name is Hamida. I work for MDQ Academy and I volunteer in MDQ Masjid.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Fazlul Haq Sayyed. As we all know, we belong to some organization, so I am the president of Pakistani American Society of New York. And I see here at least 6 people from the same organization, starting from Rafi Fazli, down here, and to my right. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm Safdar Hussain Chadda, and I'm past chairman of Bakoli and Praksani and Islamic Center of Long Island, and I'm now director of PASNI.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Ashraf Azmi. I'm a member of PASNI and a political activist in the Pakistani American community.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Maria Sheikh and I am the Director of Legal Research at the Office of Assemblyman for Ramos.
This is wonderful. I'm so happy we have a wonderful cross-section of leaders here who throughout the years we've worked together on different things, and this is just a group that we need to have this discussion. Before we start, I want to thank the Turkish Cultural Center, Sadre, personally. Thank you so much for opening up your doors once again, for being leaders in the community. I'm I really appreciate, you guys have always been there, not only for the Muslim community, but for the rest of the community as well. They all know this place like the back of their hand because they've been here so many times. So starting, I'm going to start to talk a little bit about my district, some of the things, some of the milestones, some of the things that we've achieved in my district, and then I'm going to give it to you to let me know if there's anything, any milestones in your particular community. Now, when I say milestones, I'm talking about milestones as far as elected officials being able to secure something for the Muslim community, pass a law, or funding that has helped the Muslim community, either Nassau or Suffolk County. So in my district, we have the Bayshore Mosque, and we also have the MDQ schools. But we've managed in my district to create a good marriage between the public schools and the MDQ Academy. And one of the things that we did is introduce the board members of both schools to each other. Rafi playing a major role in that, and creating a working relationship where the schools started to farm out their preschool to their pre-K to the MDQ school, which means that MDQ was now handling certain classrooms of public school students and is partially a public school. The first year of creating that relationship, I was able to get $250,000 for the MDQ school in capital money, capital construction money, and that was for the purpose of building out classrooms and the infrastructure of the school, so that basically by building out more classrooms and accommodating more pre-K students, the MDQ was able to rely on more income from public money from the public schools because they were paying them to handle that. That helps them to sustain themselves and to handle all the other students as well. That the Muslim community must also realize that there's room for everybody, and that if there is an organization that helps the Pakistani community or the Egyptian community, and tomorrow 10 more organizations are created, that's not hurting you. That's helping you. That's helping you. That's not competition. That's not taken away from any. The more your people organize, the better, wherever they are. And if you're all fighting for the same thing, more power to you. But what human nature is that when you create something, you get protective of it. But we need to rise above that, and we were able to do that. And I see the Muslim community getting to that point now at this table. I see PACOLI, PASNI, APPAC. I see all these organizations that that maybe in the beginning they wonder, why do we need this? We're already doing this. But now I see you all at the same events, fighting for the same thing, doing the same things, and actually achieving many good things. So that's part of the growing pains, and it really, for me, it's inspiring to see what's happening in the Muslim community, because this didn't exist 15 years ago when I was first elected. I couldn't have called a meeting like this and had all these organizations here. Most of them didn't exist, but today they are. So those are some of the major milestones, but in addition to that, legislatively, we were able to work with the Muslim community and get some things out of our schools. We got Eid holiday in the Brentwood School District. We managed to get them to supply some vegetarian meals for Muslim students, and to stop some of the students were getting ostracized because they would pray. And we were able to secure, and when I say we, I don't mean me alone. I mean Rafi and all the leaders who work together with our school board, and the relationship that was created through MDQ created a situation where we can talk to each other, where the Muslims leaders were able to talk to school board people and say, look, you have to understand these things, this is what we need. And as a result, we were able to get a prayer room for Muslim students. So now Muslim students can go privately and worship and do what they have to do. These are milestones that we achieved. Legislatively in the Assembly, we have Bill 6591, which prohibits discrimination of persons based on their religious attire. I'm a sponsor of this, and this goes directly to women who wear hijab and they go to the workplace. The workplace under this legislation must show a nexus between the religious garb and the job. If it has no nexus to the job and has no impediment to the job, there's no reason why, under this law, it would prohibit that anybody can be discriminated against because of it. Also, there's another issue, a bill that I have, that what it does is it prohibits any government entity, or any entity for that matter, from discriminating against Muslim swimwear. A lot of people and government levels have been excluding Muslim women from public pools because they wear the Muslim swimwear. The swimwear meets all the regulations, health regulations as any other swimwear. This makes it illegal for them to prohibit or to exclude anybody. And it gives the Muslim community some recourse. If they do it, you can now invoke a law. Legislative agenda, things that we've secured. Is there anything in Nassau County, with your organization, were you guys able to secure anything legislatively or funding in Nassau County for the Muslim community? Any examples we can talk about here?
I think Mineola got the Eid holiday.
Who did?
Mineola School District.
Mineola, okay.
Monday, Valley Stream.
Valley Stream also.
Valley Stream, they have it, and Bradford, they have it.
Okay, Maria, why don't you work with them, try and get a complete list?
I can give that list, I have the list.
Okay, excellent.
And I have the people who are working which are not approved yet.
Okay, good. In order,
60 different counties they are working right now.
okay, good. In order to know where you have to go, you have to know where you are. Right, so it would be good for everybody here to know exactly where we are as far as Eid holidays in schools. You might think about forming an informal Grand Council, and that would be the leadership of every organization. Meet once or twice a year, just talk about your common issues. Talk about your common issues, and then it just further affirms you together. It solidifies your direction. Right, so consider creating a Grand Council of Muslim organizations on Long Island. I think it'll be good to help with the relationships and give you a common cause. And maybe this Grand Council can pick one thing that you all do together a year. So you're all here to figure out a way to improve the condition for Muslim Americans. Faith is for your mosque. What we're talking about is how do we prevent our children from getting harassed? How do we prevent our women from being discriminated against? How do we create opportunities where government is actually spending money on in procuring with Muslim businesses? You have a right to the budget. You have government is a consumer as well, consumes billions of dollars worth of things. They should be utilizing Muslim businesses as well. Did somebody have the
Yeah. So successfully we were able to get prayer rooms in NYIT and SUNY Old Westbury. So if we could get some legislation to help us get more prayer rooms in all the SUNY and CUNY schools to secure that for them, that'd be great. We just need help from organizations because, like, a president for the MSA, we can only do so much in our just one university. And so we've had discussions about this. So if there's anything we could do to get more prayer rooms for them, that would be amazing.
Okay, that's an idea for legislation. All right, so we're gonna go to the first category, which is front and center on everybody's mind, is the climate of Islamophobia, the issues of racial profiling. We can't legislate racism away. People are going to have their feelings. We can legislate controlling their behavior, and those are things that we've dealt with some of these laws that we have here. But there's things that the Muslim community, from my perspective, needs to do. After seeing what happened in New Zealand, we need to have an ounce of prevention. I think mosques need to start thinking seriously about security, not wait for something like this to happen. Have emergency plans, perhaps have meetings with police departments and figure out, in the event of emergency, what would happen, what is the plan, and then share that with the people from the mosque.
Like about a couple of months ago, there was an interfaith event at Selden Mosque in conjunction with the Three Villages interfaith group. So that is, I think, a solution to all this problem. Interfaith, that's what the city did after 9/11. And there are many new organizations sprung up, but where diversity can be enclosed, all of us embrace each other through interfaith events.
Okay. So more interfaith.
Interfaith, yes.
Also interfaith.
Interfaith is very important.
Yes.
Yeah, I just did a program of interfaith. The first time the Hispanic Muslims do an interfaith program. It was not well attended. I think.
But it takes time to grow. It takes time to flourish.
It was okay. It was okay.
And the other aspect that we can, involve everybody is the youth programs against bullying in schools.
Yes.
Yes.
Generally, not only put up a hijab,
Yes.
but gender.
In general.
You know, like somebody's fat or somebody's skinny, complexion, race, faith, ethnicity.
Access.
So through the youth program, and they have funding for that at the town level.
And luckily in our street where Bayshore Mosque is, it's on 3rd Street, and there are already 2 churches of Latino speaking churches, 2 big, huge. So we could easily set up something like that.
Yeah.
We already have.
You guys have done a really, really good job. You brought up a good issue though, that deserves discussion. And I've heard this also in the Hispanic community, and rightfully, you know, I could understand the thought process. Some people in the Hispanic community say, you know, what you said, if we have special laws, then it creates resentment because we're, you know, there's a special law. What I tell people, and I've heard this also from non-people of color, who say, why do we need a law? It's already illegal to pick on somebody. It's already illegal to assault somebody. What I normally tell them is, yes, if you assault somebody because you had a fight, crime of anger. If you assault somebody because you're trying to steal something, it's a crime against their property. But when you assault me because I'm Hispanic, or somebody because they're Muslim, it's a crime against my very existence. And it's a crime against a community. And I feel that that should rise to a higher level.
That I suggest and I request legislative action to be taken in our schools and library. We're doing mosques, which are very small outcomes of interfaith programs, 10, 15 people in biggest mosques. If we do this program by the state level in every school, mandatory to get the maybe website presentation or online presentation and learn what are the Islamophobia problems, what are the racial profiling. Teach the students, different levels, and the teachers. Those teachers goes to ShopRite, those teachers goes to public places. When they learn, they produce better reactions. I know it's small. Definitely Interfaith is a great program, but outcomes are not good. So enforce this in our schools and libraries and create some program. They have to take it.
Yeah, they're very good.
What I've seen in the city, when the new session starts,
the
teachers are mandated to give like 6 lesson plans on discrimination, on drugs, on, you know, sexual harassment. So maybe that way we might be able to get into the school system against bullying.
Yes.
And then under bullying, you know, Islamophobia can fall in.
Basically, on the cusp where we're talking about security, we did with the Muslim American Advisory Board under Steve Alone. What we did was all the mosques in Suffolk County had a very, before Ramadan actually, we had a very good, strong relationship with all the police precincts. And we met with all the CEOs, commanding officers, and they came to the mosque, and we built a very good rapport with the police officers and with the police, and that's one thing. Also, as far as you mentioned about, Dr. Sabah mentioned about the security, there is Homeland Security funding. There are grants that are available to religious places of worship. If you can present a case, I mean, there's a certain deadline you have to meet, you have to give an application, and they can give you funding for that. So afterwards, I can,
we have addresses.
They have grants. There's definitely grants. They're available.
So you have that information?
I have that information.
How would people contact you? Email? Or?
Yeah, I have my email. I can give it to them. But the problem is just that they have a deadline, and we found out about this literally 2 days before it was done. But it is available.
Governor Cuomo also had last year for the same purpose.
Yeah. So, like for example, I'm so sorry. We had some issues in the past where. We had some sort of vandalism at our mosque in Huntington, and the police officers actually came, you know, I believe the 2nd precinct on Park Avenue, and they actually set up cameras for us, and we caught that perpetrator who was vandalizing the mosque and stuff like that. So, based on what we were talking about earlier about police report, I think that's very important. I think that's something we as in Suffolk County did very well with the police, with the different precincts, and we want to do that. One thing I wanted to say that as far as sensitivity training goes, something along the lines for sensitivity training for police officers, law enforcement, child welfare. This is a big issue as well. A lot of times they don't understand how Muslim communities work, how the women and, you know, mosques and stuff like that. So that's something that we could work on.
That is email and...
I'd like to mention something else quickly.
Yes.
In regard to the grant, actually, there is some organization who could help to write the grant for the security. to put it at like, to put it the proper way, to be presented to the government, to be at a higher risk, to be accepted, and then they charge percentage of the grant itself, like free. So that might be something mosque could use as well to make sure they will,
type of thing,
yeah, write it on behalf of the
Do you
mosque.
have like some further more information on that? How to go by that?
The organization name is FREE, F-R-E-E. They could be contacted and then tell them, we heard about the grant for security.
Website, free, just
Free.com.
Under Steve Levy, it was terrible.
Yeah.
Under Steve Levy, and I had to call him out publicly on these things, you know, many of you know the big battle I had with Steve Levy, and he was a Democrat. He was very sensitive because he was being accused of inflaming racial tensions with all the stuff he was doing, so he didn't want to see any kind of bias crimes take place because that would reflect on him. So we had instances in the other mosque, the one on 3rd Avenue in Brentwood. Somebody broke in and drew a swastika on the wall there. And the imam called me and told me, you know, look, they just handled it as vandalism. They didn't handle this as a bias crime. And I called bias crimes and I said, why? They drew a swastika in a mosque. They didn't steal anything. They just went, why is this not a bias crime? And he says, well, Phil, because a swastika is normally something against Jews. I said, are you kidding me? He said, Phil, what can I tell you? He was somebody I had worked with before. He was a boss there. He says, you know what's going on here. And what was happening, he's kind of talking you off the record. He says, they don't want the numbers of bias crimes to go up. So whenever these crimes occur, they want us just to classify them as a regular vandalism, not as a bias vandalism. And I fought and they finally upgraded it because I made a big production. But that's where the leadership makes a difference. And with education under the Sunni schools, they don't offer halal food. CUNY does, I understand.
Yeah, your school offer halal food?
They do, right? So, so again, that's something we should think about with legislation. CUNY schools should do the same as Sunnis and should offer this. This is something that if we create some legislation, all your organizations should get around. Put that on your letter to your state official and say, I'm asking you on behalf of our organization to support this and vote yes on this legislation. So as far as education, I threw out a few suggestions here, but I want to hear from you if are there any further suggestions.
I just want to emphasize the importance of the first one with like allocating prayer time to students. So for like, Muslim women, it's not mandatory to pray like the Friday prayer, but for men it is, and so they have to like go and there has to be like a congregation, you know, with like the speech and then they have to pray. So maybe something like where they allocate time, but then at the same time like whatever period, whatever class they're missing, you know, like a teacher, some staff, you know, after school, whatever, like so they're not missing out. You know, they're still getting it back.
Okay.
Basically, when I was in high school, I actually left like my last period to go to the mosque to actually pray my Friday prayers, right? But I would miss class. So I mean, if they, like what she said, like we're after school program, or where the school could actually bus these kids to the mosque and then take them back, like you know, like have them take like to field trips.
Right.
And every Friday we have the allocation for that fund for each school district where they can go to the mosque on a Friday, do their prayers, and then come back to school.
Right.
Yeah.
You probably have a hard time with that one, but that would be spending funds to support religion. But at the very least, like you mentioned, nobody should be penalized. You know, instructors should be required to allow you to make up whatever you miss and not penalize you for your religious beliefs. So.
Yeah, that might apply also to students who miss their exams for the holiday. They consider them absent and they penalize them and they give them hard time. That used to happen to my kids when they were in elementary and high school. Hopefully till the holiday issue become like an official holiday where kids could take off. That is not a regular absent day. They miss the school because they have their holiday and they that cannot be calculated against them with their allowed absent days, and they cannot penalize because they missed the task because they celebrated their holiday.
Right. One of the solutions we found to to those holidays, especially if something is not a state holiday, then schools find it hard to give the students off that day. But what the workaround we found is that there's a certain amount of administrative days that schools are off during the year, that their teachers have some kind of conference or some, they just need to make those on the Muslim holiday. And this way they're not losing money, they're not creating any issue.
But I'm thinking about kids getting penalized because the school does not accommodate that day as a day off.
No, but what you say, it's like parent teachers, day. Make it on one of those days.
Right, the schools are already closed certain days a year that have nothing to do with holidays. They're administrative days. Yeah. All you have to do is do that on the days that Muslims observe certain holidays. The Friday prayers, that's another issue. But but I found a way to work around when they balk and they say, no, we can't do this because it's not a state holiday.
Right.
No, but you have these other days where you're flexible. Every year you can decide what day the school's going to be closed.
Right.
And that could be, an Eid holiday or whatever. So that's the way you can do it.
Rafi,
I know you have to leave, and so I was going to save this to the end. But one of the issues that we were talking about is where we need to go, and of course we need more funding for Muslim institutions. You're on the board of MDQ, so I'm announcing now, I got you another $125,000. A whole bunch more paperwork. Eventually you'll get there. We'll talk to you tomorrow about starting the paperwork on that, right?
Thank you, I'm so sorry you have to go to work.
It's for technology for the MDQ school.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Big friends like you.
I would like to add something else about education.
Yeah.
So Ramadan now falls during finals week for like a lot of students in college and stuff like that. And an issue we found is in a lot of the CUNYs and SUNYs, iftar time, like if you take like night classes, iftar time where you break your fast is during those finals, and they wouldn't let students bring like dates or like water with them to take to break their fast. Like some of the professors were like, no, I don't allow these things. In my exam room, you can finish your exam and then, and so if there's some legislation that we could have that like you're allowed to bring like a date and something just to break your fast.
Very good,
that
very
would be
good
something
idea. Yeah. The next subject is diversity in government. There's only so much you can do, and we found this also with the Hispanic community. We could sit here and talk about what government should do and what our leaders should do and what our elected officials should do, but really when you think about it, you're Americans. Right? And you should be asking a Muslim elected official what you need. There should be a Muslim person behind the scenes writing policy, as well as every other segment of the American society. So when we talk about diversity in the workforce, the biggest way we can do it is get Muslims elected. Then they have control over budgets. They have control over who gets hired. They have control over laws that say you must diversify this particular department, that particular department, So where that is concerned, I know we have a Muslim elected, his name is Thomas. Is he Muslim?
Thomas
or?
Kennedy.
No, he's not, he's Christian.
Okay, so where are we as far as Muslims elected officials, Suffolk and Nassau County? So, as you all know, Talat is running.
Yeah.
Right, in Brookhaven. So she will make history and be the first.
Inshallah.
When she wins. Now, again, it's important to get your own elected, but it's important to get your own who are going to do the right thing. Just because a person is Muslim doesn't mean they're going to do the right thing. You can get a Muslim elected and they'll be walking around with Peter King all over the place. Believe me, Hispanics do the same thing. We had Hispanics vote against licenses for undocumented. Hispanic senators vote against that. So we also have to hold our own accountable. Our own can hurt us more than anybody from the outside because we trust them. Okay, the other thing too that's real important is that every level of government has, and this is a reason why the workforce is not diversified a lot of times, is because the Muslim community doesn't know what's available. If you get it the legitimate way, if there's if your community is just advised of the jobs available, and they're not, government have a certain amount of money, whether it's county, state, town, to deal with the media. They put their public notices in newspapers. In Newsday, you'll see a job for police officer, 911 operator. They'll see social worker. But they're not putting it in Arabic newspapers in Long Island. They're not putting it in Urdu newspapers or Hindu papers. They're not putting this in those things. And that media has the right for government to also procure in their area also. So one of the things that we should look at, because it'll help your community just be aware of what is there, and then you can take advantage of it, is creating mandates or working with elected officials to create policy that says that a certain amount of their media budget must be spent on ethnic papers within the Muslim community. Because what happens is, like in any immigrant community, parents, sometimes there's language barriers. You have a young person, maybe he wants to become, wants to work in the sheriff's department. Maybe he wants to work in the crime lab, in forensic, or maybe he wants, but the parents, because of language barriers, wouldn't know how to find the county website. They wouldn't know, but the parents are in the mosque. And if somebody comes to the mosque and says, this is available, they might say, hey, my son, this would be good for my son, you know. The outreach is real important, even though in a perfect world, yes, everybody should fend for themselves and good, but there are cultural reasons why it doesn't happen. So doing both, a grand council, we get the Bengali community, we get the Pakistani, the leaders of all the different.
So I suggest if anything positive come out of here today, what we can do is just everybody from whatever respective communities or whatever organizations that they represent, put in your numbers or emails together. We make just a database right here.
Right now, we're doing that. We're going to make a list of everybody here, and we're going to give it out to everybody so you can.
Question: how often are we going to have these meetings?
You said twice a year.
Well,
I think that's too.
No, I'm talking about what you're talking about a grand council.
No, we're talking about these round table.
As far as I'm concerned, this meeting is to create a legislative agenda. Okay. Certainly, if you want to meet a couple of times, we can do that. My purpose is that going into next year, next session, I want to have an idea, and you should have an idea. If the Muslim community, if you're fighting for the Muslim community, what do you want? What does the Muslim community want? And through this discussion here, I think at least once a year before session starts, we need to have this so we know where to go, you know, what we want, what to ask for, and how to do it. So that's why I broke it down into, I'm open to do this a couple of times a year. You want to have a discussion, but as far as legislative agenda, there should be at least one meeting dedicated to this. These are the major issues. What do we want? What do we need as far as these issues? Doctor, did you have?
I was just going to say about the census 2020,
yes,
that we should have, you know, we should be counted. I mean, we really need to get into our groups, and we really need to get everybody involved and making sure that our community is counted, and that also makes a difference when you when you take legislative action.
And along that lines, there's a lot of jobs in the Census Bureau open for young people. At $20, $25 an hour, some young college student might want it. Let my office know. We'll get you the contacts as to how they can apply for those jobs. They're hiring now.
Something along those lines, especially those people who are in Suffolk County. Suffolk County has this program, Suffolk County Police Department. It's called Suffolk County Police Department SHIELD program. Basically what it is, it's a program where they interact with different organizations, mosques, big companies or whatever. And they also have one of these things where they can also get remote access to all the cameras there. And they also have emergency response. And they have something that they can set up like that if there's an active shooter or something. So that's something that I highly recommend, especially those people who are involved.
Will they do it as a permanent fixture?
Yes.
They will?
Yes. I actually went there and then I was involved in the academy and stuff like that. So it's called the Suffolk County Police Department SHIELD program.
So they have their own cameras they've installed in the masjid, or
what they do is you have to sign a waiver or whatever. They can access your IP address and look at your camera if there's anything 24/7, they have access to it. And they're the ones who also initiated the active shooter training seminars. I know you guys have.
Yeah, we had this.
We had ours too. So I highly recommend those people who are in Suffolk County to please get your mosque or organizations registered with this.
Muslim women's issues, right? And so I have no suggestions other than the legislations that I wrote, because it seems Muslim women seem to be more discriminated against, especially because of religious wear. So I propose the legislation on swimwear and religious garb, prohibiting any kind of discrimination, making an employer have to prove that the way you're dressing has some kind of nexus to your job. And if they can't prove that, then they can't prevent you from wearing your religious wear. Other than that, I'd like to hear from the women here, what are some of their issues that perhaps we can incorporate into a legislative agenda.
You know what, I don't think anybody would decline an application telling the woman because you're wearing hijab.
No, they're not gonna say that.
Yeah,
They're not gonna say that.
Yeah, they always find
They say
other,
it.
you know, reasons
Right.
to decline or not to offer.
Nothing but peace.
This is my own opinion about it.
Mhm.
I don't.
You know, the only way, if like they did with the minorities, you need to have this certain percentage of this minority represented in
Yeah.
whatever, you know, like public.
We used to have that. That used to be the
You know,
law.
but they are not part of the minority.
Yeah,
See,
no.
the problem
We
is
used to
like.
have that, what they
see-
reversed the law, the Supreme Court reversed it and said now we can't have affirmative action.
Affirmative action.
We can't have quotas. So now the best we can have is goals. But the problem is like, and you know, look, I always say that racism, modern day racism is not the way it was 100 years ago. 100 years ago, the law was a black person couldn't go to this restaurant, couldn't go into this store. Black person couldn't go to that school. Muslim person, anybody brown or black or Hispanic could, that was the law. Like it or not, that was the law. But since civil rights laws came out, then they found sophisticated ways that went underground, right? So modern day racism is no longer that much in your face. They're not gonna say you can't have a job. Modern day racism is done with a calculator, a formula that works out that allows them the deniability to discriminate against you, but they're saying, no, we're not discriminating. But we have to, and that's why it's so important that the only way to combat that is to have Muslims with that calculator in their hand. They have to be the person who's making that formula. It's through education. It's through education that people of color are really gonna break out of what's happening in this country. And that is why, systemically, education is built to keep Muslims and brown people back. You know, if you look at the schools, the school system here, from K to 12, if you live in a zip code where there's low home values, right, then you're not paying, people are not paying as much taxes. The schools for those kids have less money for their education. If you live in a community that has millionaire mansions, they have a windfall of taxes they're paying, so their rich kids are getting a top-of-the-line education. That disparity is built right in, and the reason is nobody wants to share their pie with brown people.
Well,
Harvard,
Harvard University has been sued for that, just for that purpose.
Right.
You know. They were discriminating with the South Asian, they were, you know.
Yeah, with the foundation, that's why we created.
They had higher grade, they had high GPA, everything was better than others, but they were not admitted.
Look,
just on the, you know, they have certain criteria where they can discriminate, that their social conduct or something like that. Because I interview students for the NYU, the College of Dentistry, I see, you know, what we are given guidelines, but I don't know what happened to the Harvard University, that there is no guidelines.
It's because your education is a bigger threat than anything else. Your education is a bigger threat. This country has known that for a long time. A slave with a book was more dangerous than a slave with a gun. Really. That's why they didn't want slaves to learn anything.
That's right.
Okay? So systemically, there are things, you know, they keep saying, well, no, it's not discrimination. Well, look at the school formula. You're basing the school funding based on the value of houses. So a poor community that has low value houses is going to have a poor school. And then if a child does happen to make it into college from that poor community, then he gets into college, and the wealthy kid, his college is all paid for because his parents are paying for it, right? He graduates after having done the right thing. He graduates, he starts making money from day one. The poor kid who made it into college, he graduates 4 or 5 years later, he's up to here with loans. So even in the workplace, after that poor kid has done everything right, the wealthy kid starts off with a head start. This is why I say that racism is built into a formula now. It's sophisticated. It's not in your face. They're not burning a cross. Every time they make that formula, they burnt a cross on all our lawns. You know, this conversation doesn't have to end here. If you have if you think about this, you come up with any suggestions or issues for women, legislation that we can do that would help Muslim women, please speak to Maria, and we'll try and reduce it into writing into legislation. Now the other subgroup, large group, is young Muslims, right? It's we have a dynamic, and this dynamic isn't just with the Muslim community, it's with every immigrant community. The first wave of immigrant comes here. We've been through a lot to get here. We've faced a lot of obstacles. We've been through a lot in our own country. We came here because we're trying to get away from something, right? And we're happy to be here. We're happy that we can now make it and we can take care of our family and nobody's, you know, hurting my quality of life. And we don't want to get involved in politics. Yeah? The older generation, for the most part, just wants to take care of his family because politics was problems. Politics is the reason I came here. So I want to get away from that, from my country. And they think that politics here is the same way as our countries. Same thing in Latin America and same thing in the Muslim community. So now you have a younger generation of Muslims. They have their feet in two cultures. They understand the old way of thinking, what's happening in Pakistan, in Egypt, and in Bangladesh. They understand what's going there, but they also understand a different system in which we can actually do things. We can change things. We have rights. We can say no to our government. We can say we're not going to stand for this to our government. And it is that generation that's going to bring the Muslim community to the next level. And the first wave are the pioneers. There are many of you who came here. The first wave who came here and out of nothing built something. And it's a tribute to you that they're able to do what they have to do, or what they're able to do now. And if it wasn't for your sacrifice, it wasn't for, because it's not the entire Muslim community that did what you did here at this table. Everybody here has reached out and become an ambassador in one form or another for your community. Your average Muslim is just working, trying to survive here. But you civically put your community on the map. It is this generation that's going to take you to the next level. But they face certain things and certain obstacles. So I wanted to throw that as a general issue to see if there's any issues we can talk about, or anything as far as funding, as far as legislation that young Muslims have to deal with in this country. So he brought up a very important issue, and it's not unique to the Muslim community. It's just the generational gaps that happens with every generation. In your generation and in our generation, certainly when we were younger, we thought, you know, the elders had an older way of thinking, right?
Yeah.
And
we just
our young people
didn't have Facebook, that's all.
Right, exactly. Exactly. They're in a different world.
Yeah.
In their hand, they have the entire world in their hand. We had to go to a library, right? We had to look through a card file, find a book, look for the book, sit and read it, and then when we're done, put the book back there and go home, and we didn't read until next time. They have the whole world right in their fingertips. They have an overload of information, but it also makes them very powerful promoters of change. So what you're saying is that certainly there's a generation gap. There's a generation gap in the middle of this immigrant experience coming to a new world. Then you have young people who find themselves in another environment. And what happens sometimes with the Muslim community, same thing in the Hispanic community, is that the young people assimilate quicker than the older people. The older people come here, they're working, sometimes they're working around other Muslims, around other Pakistanis, around other Bangladeshis, but the younger person is around people speaking English all day. They're learning the language quicker. They're assimilating, they're learning the culture, and then it further divides the normal generation gap that every society has, you know.
But the things were not available in those days when we came to this country.
What's that?
The things were not available.
They weren't available.
I think generation gap will always be there. I remember I used to tell my grandmother, you don't know anything about it. My grandkids telling me the same thing.
Right.
Grandpa, you don't know about this.
Exactly.
That's the way it is.
Exactly.
You have to.
Angela and I always say, you know, we're at fault for a lot of things. Also, you know, because we want our kids not to suffer the things we do. Then sometimes they don't understand. I remember one day our son, he wanted to use the car, right? And we were somewhere, and we told him, no, you can't use the car tonight, you know? And he says, I can't believe that I have 2 cars here in the driveway, and I have to take it. And I said, you mean I've been making all those car payments for all these years, and it's your car? You have 2, you said you have 2 cars? And I realized it's us. We opened the whole world for them. They haven't struggled the way we have, but those are the roots, but at the same time, they are the ones who are going to bring us to a different level. In the same way we went through it with our generation, there needs to be that dialogue, I think, between the younger, because you have two societies that are pulling your way. The fear of the older generation is that what you're being exposed to here is going to bring you away from the values. That you and it's not. No, you can survive that because of the foundation you have. Remember, in the United States, I don't believe the family nucleus is as firm as it is in our countries. When we had to depend on the family to survive.
Yes.
Not only the mother and father, kids, but our cousins and uncles and everything. That whole unit.
The whole unit have to be together.
We survived. We survived because of all of them. This one helped us with this. This one did. They did the crops. And that's a foundation, strong foundation that will carry them through. But I mean, that's a subject for another round table. Actually,
that's a different subject.
Perhaps we could do that one day. Get some young Muslims and older, and let's talk about some of the issues. I don't know how many minutes we have left, but the last thing I wanted to talk about is what do we, and this is what we rarely do, is we talk about, everybody who's hurting us and the anti-Muslim people and the racists and the government not doing this, but we don't talk too much about what we do to ourselves, right? Some of the issues in-house. Sometimes the competitiveness that we have, not just Muslims, it's all immigrants, because when we come from poor countries, we've always had to compete with each other for the little bit that there is.
Yes.
Then we come here, and I'm gonna tell you, when I first got elected, my biggest problems I got from old-time Hispanic leaders.
Yeah.
They were giving me a headache about everything. I'm like, well, you guys supposedly have fought for so long to get a Hispanic elected. What is your issue? And we got to realize, again, another generational gap. They were seen as the gatekeeper to the Hispanic community for so long, and here came somebody new, and now they're no longer the gatekeeper. And I'm also, perhaps, some of the old generation in the Hispanic community, they became that gatekeeper because they got close to an elected official. They would help our community somewhat, but they really couldn't question too much. And when somebody came out like me and said, well, this is wrong, and we have a right to expect more, and that was shaking up what they felt that they had built,
Yes.
And we were hurt, and they were holding back Hispanic leaders, Once that gate was open, then, it created a different type of leadership. I imagine in the Muslim community that happens too.
Yes.
A certain amount of competitiveness.
Yes.
We hold ourselves to a different standard. These are cultural things that happen. It's just the nature of our countries and our coming here. Right. And we got past. The same thing with organizations. Hispanic organizations, there were one or two, and then when others came up, they're like, oh, you're dividing us. Phil, what are you doing? You organize this one and that one. We should all be together. Yeah, in a perfect world, we should all be together, but we're not. So if they're going to fight in their silo for the same thing you're fighting for, you should be happy. If you're really concerned about the issue, and not just you're having your little fiefdom, then you should be happy that 2 or 3 other groups are fighting for the same thing. And then we finally, once we started winning things and getting some things for our community, it took on its own life. And I see that happening in the Muslim community. A little bit of resistance in the beginning by the old organizations that existed here a long time, South Asian organizations and everything. They resisted, but now they realize we're all in it together.
Just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you.
And you're talking about diversification and different views, and people are fighting. I don't think you're fighting when it comes to you. We all are supporting.
Thank you, you guys. I consider my family, and I truly mean that.
Of course.
We're not. You don't just see me election time. We're together all the time, all year round.
Thank you so much for believing in us.
Yes.
That we are good people, that we are not terrorists, that we can make it and we can do it. Thank you.
Exactly. We'll reduce this to writing. Everybody will get a report, inshallah, this year that we get laws passed that came out of this meeting here. And thank you all. Thank you all for your participation. Yes.